Hi everyone! I know it has been a minute since my last video. I am so sorry. I work full-time and sometimes by the time I get home, I am just so tired. My nails are not done. Why? Because I wanted to get this video done as quickly as possible, or at least this portion of the video done as quickly as possible. If you're here, then you're ready to start your sleeves. And if you have followed my tutorial for thus far, then you should have this nice, long, beautiful, clean raglan sleeve. And we did this with a knit front and back. We didn't need no make one right or make one left, all confusing and stuff. This was just knit front and back, and it looks fantastic. It says our sleeves are worked on 2.5 double point needles or using the magic loop method. I'm still using the same size 2s I've been using the entire time because I don't have 2.5s and I didn't want to go out and buy new needles just for this project. So we're gonna slip our X number of stitches. So whatever size you're knitting, you're gonna slip that amount of stitches onto your needles. Then you're gonna pick up and knit X amount of stitches along the stitches that were cast at the underarm. Then you're gonna place a marker in the middle of those stitches for the beginning of the round. And then you're going to work in the round and stockinette stitch until the sleeve measures 6.25 inches. Don't worry about measuring because it says, while at the same time decreasing 2 stitches every 12th round for a total of 4 times as follows. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using our handy dandy tally counter, and we're going to be counting every 12 rows, and on your 12th row you're going to be decreasing a stitch in the beginning and decreasing a stitch at the end of your row. And so we're going to do that 4 times. At your 4th time, and you know you're counting 12 rows every time, at your 4th time, then you're done, and then we're just going to do the icord bind off. So don't worry about measuring. We're just going to keep track of our rows with this guy and make it super easy on yourself. Okay? So I have already cut the knot off of my scrap yarn here, and so I'm going to grab my working yarn, which is over here, and this is my little stitch marker that I'm going to use to put in the center of these to show the beginning of the row. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to use my needle here, and I'm going to start transferring the stitches from my waste yarn onto my needle. And because I'm always afraid that I'm going to drop a stitch, I do it very kind of slowly. I'm sure other more experienced stitchers out there can do it a lot quicker. I don't really know of any other way to do it, but so I'm just gonna put a whole bunch on here, then slide the yarn out, then put a whole bunch on here, then slide the yarn out, and just kind of keep doing that all the way around. And then when we get to the end, I will show you how we're going to pick up the stitches for the underarm. So I'm going to go ahead and keep putting these in here, and I will see you back here shortly. I ended up last night messing up. So my yarn, my working yarn, is already attached, and it got attached over here. It was originally attached here, but I pulled these stitches out. And I'm way too lazy to go back and unknit all these other stitches. So I apologize in advance. So here's what we do now. So we have, if you're doing the magic loop method, you have your loop of your wire here in the back, and you'll have your stitches, for the most part, divided equally. Mine are not divided equally, and I'm really not worried about it. I'll divide them more or better once I get these stitches put on. I have these two little stitch markers that I'm going to be using, and I'm going to show you what we're going to use these for. We are going to try really hard to pick up these stitches in a way that there's no gap. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Where's my little pointy thing? Okay. And let me zoom in a little bit. Okay. So sometimes when we pick up stitches for the underarms, it leaves us with a little gap. And ordinarily, you know, really and truly, that's fine, because we can actually just weave in ends. We can weave in that end where we've picked up stitches to close that gap. But if we don't have to do that, then why should we do it? So what you want to do is you want to look for a yarn thread that's right here. So that's a big, huge gap, and we don't want to knit that way. But we're going to see this thread right here, and this is the leg of a stitch that's over top of it, right here. And then we see the other side of that long, loose yarn right here. So we have this one and this one. And these are the two pieces here that will give us that big gap. So what we want to do is we want to pick these stitches up on the very edge in such a way that they're going to close that gap. It tells us to pick up and knit 12 stitches. Well, I'm going to pick up these 2 extra stitches on this side to close the gap, and then the 2 extra stitches on this side to close the gap. And I'm going to use these little stitch markers to show where that gap is, so that at the end, when I'm going all the way around on this side and this side, I can knit 2 together to close, to bring myself back to the stitch count that I should have. But I'm going to be honest, I'm going to be real. Sometimes when it tells you to pick up, you know, 12 stitches or pick up 11 stitches, sometimes in order to get a really good fit and to keep that gap from coming there, sometimes you got to pick up more stitches. That's what I've at least noticed in my years of knitting. And I'm, like I said before, I'm a lazy knitter, but I've been knitting for almost 17 years. So sometimes you got to do what you got to do. So my area down here is a little stretched out because I went ahead and did this a couple of times so I could get myself situated for how I wanted to show you how to do it. So let's do this. I'm going to show you what I'm going to pick up with this needle right here. And so we're going to come over here, and again we're going to find this right here, which is the big hole here, that if we were to pick up this, or if we were to not knit with this, we would get a gap. And then this is the stitch, you see that here, that goes over top of it. And then this is the other side. So this right here and this right here is one thread. So what we're going to do is we are going to, first we're going to pull out our working needle here, and that stretches it out a little bit. So just know that as we're doing this, your fabric is going to get stretched out a little bit, and that's okay. And also, you are going to be picking up and knitting with a working yarn that's not already attached. I went ahead, and so that's why mine is attached. So do you see the stretchingness going on right now? Here we can see that thread better here, and then this right here is the stitch that goes over top, and then this right here is the other side of that thread. So we're going to be picking up this side and this side. So for this stitch right here, we're going to pick up from the back to the front. So we're coming from the back to the front, right there. And you might say, oh, that looks counterintuitive. Just wait a minute. So now you can see better where that stitch is that comes over top of it. And so now we're going to come over here to this part of that same yarn, and we're going to pick up from the front to the back. So do you see how now that we've made that area tighter? So I'm going to come back out here for a minute, and I'm going to put my little stitch marker here right in the center, and that's going to remind me where I need to knit together to close to bring myself back to the proper stitch count. So I'm going to go ahead and go again and pick this yarn up front to back. There we go, we've got that now. And so now I'm going to start picking up these stitches. So when you pick up stitches, we want to avoid picking up the bars. Do you see those bars right there? We don't want to pick up the bars. And we also don't want to pick up the stitches on the very, very edge here, because that's going to give us a gap as well. See how if we were to pick up those stitches, there'd be a little gap there. I hope I'm making sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to find our V's, and we're going to pick up inside the V. And so we see this little ridge here. That little ridge is going to be on the inside of where our stitches are going to be picked up. But don't worry, it's not going to mess with your armpit. It's not going to touch your arm or anything. And it's going to be almost, it's going to be completely invisible. You won't even notice it. So now you can pick up a V from the second row down, or you can pick up that V from right underneath that top row. It's totally up to you. So I am going to pick up my stitches from that top area, and we're going to pick up in between the V's, just like that. So you're going to, remember, we're counting stitches now too, and I'm going to let you know in advance, I'm probably going to have more than 12 stitches I'm picking up in between here, because I want to make sure I get in between all of my V's. And then over here, I'll pick up those 2 side stitches again to close that gap like I did here. So now that we have, ooh, the wind's picking up out there, we have these 2 stitches. We just picked up one here. They're not really stitches, but we just have that loose yarn. So now I'm going to go right here to where my first V is and put my needle through the V. I'm going to grab my working yarn, and I'm going to wrap that around and stretch the fabric out, because sometimes you got to stretch it so you can get in there and pick that yarn up. So there's 1 stitch. Now here's my next V. I'm going to get in here, pick that working yarn up, pull it out. That's my next stitch. Here's the next V. I'm gonna get in here. Do you hear my belly? Sorry about that. So I'm in that V, and I'm picking up that next stitch right here. So now we've got those two stitches. There are those 2 bits of the loose yarn over here with the stitch marker in the middle, and we've picked up 3 stitches so far, and you can see the ridge on the back edge here. So we're just going to keep going. Here's my next V, and I'm going to reach in there, pick up my yarn, stretch it out a little bit, and I didn't get it all, so I'm going to do that again. Reach in here and pick up that yarn. There we go, got that. So now you see here where it's stretched out now. So here's those bars. We don't want the bars. We're going in to the V. So now I'm picking up that. And if you can see what I did all these on the top row right underneath that edge, and I put this one in the second row under the edge just because the top one was kind of stretched out. It's not going to make a difference. So this top row is seeming to be really tight, so I'm going to start going into the second row. It is not going to make a difference in your garment at all. So if you're having trouble getting into that top row, it's fine. Just move on down to the second row. And here's those bars again. We don't want the bars. We're going into the V. Are you keeping track of how many I'm picking up? Because I'm not. Avoid the bars. And here's the V again. Oh my gosh, you hear my stomach? I apologize for that. There we go, we've got that stitch on there. And here we're avoiding the bars. And as you're doing this, if you've had to do it a few times, your stitches are gonna get a little stretched out. That's okay, because remember, we still have to block this bad guy. All is forgiven in blocking. It looks like I didn't, here it looks like I didn't capture all of that yarn. So I'm gonna pull that out and try that again. See how it kind of got a little, all right, I'm good, I got that one. So I just wanted to pull that back out and make sure I've got the whole, all of the yarn on that needle. So avoid the bars, come on down here and grab that stitch. Sometimes it wants to be really hard. So don't be hard on yourself when you're pulling these stitches up if it takes you a little while and you have to redo it a few times. So this one right here, we're avoiding the bars and we're coming into the V. I hear some of my neighbors, it sounds like maybe they're putting up wood over their windows. So here we had, right here in those V stitches was where we picked up. We're avoiding these bars. Now we're coming into this side. There we go. I should probably count to see how many stitches I have, huh? So these were those two edges. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Y'all, I am already on 11, and I've still got one more stitch to go here, I think. Actually, no, I can go ahead. Yeah, I think I got one more stitch I want to pick up right here for that 12 stitch, and then as I go around, I'll decrease here where that gap was and here. So we're avoiding this bar right there, and I'm going to come in here to the second V and pick up a stitch right there. There we go. So we got those stitches picked up, and now that we're on this side, you see, maybe you can see it easier now. This yarn, let's see this yarn right here. There's this side, and then here's the stitch that's over top of it, and then this side right here again. Let's see, here and here. So this is what we want to tighten. So they become stitches because we're going to put them on our needle, but we're doing that so we can tighten them so that we won't have that gap. Okay, so I've come to the end here, and remember my fabric here is stretched out because I've already done this a few times, just so I could make sure that what I'm showing you to do is the right thing to do. So we have got to find that thread that goes through again. So here, right here is that edge thread, and you can see where here makes that big hole, and then this stitch right here is what is holding over top there, and then this is the other side of that thread. You see, if I pull this that way, it gets tighter here. If I pull that way, it gets tighter there. So this area right here and this right here is what we're gonna put on this needle. So now what I'm gonna do, now remember mine is already stretched out, so I'm still gonna have a little gap there, but that's okay because I've already gone around the whole time, and as I do that and sort of situate my stitches again, I don't have that gap. So I'm gonna use my phone here, oh Lord help me. I'm gonna use my needle here. Actually, before I do that, let me put here, grab your little stitch marker. And remember, the middle here, the stitches that we've picked up, that's gonna be the new beginning of your row. So let's go ahead and count. These stitches don't count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm not gonna put my stitch marker on the needle. I'm gonna put my stitch marker down here on the row below, in between these guys, because that's gonna show me that right here is where my the beginning of my row is. So right now I have more stitches on this back wire here, but as soon as I get the rest of these stitches on here, you can just knit a few stitches and then you can readjust your needle as you need to. You can readjust the stitches on here as you need to. So here we go. I'm going to come under from front to back, under from front to back, put on my little stitch marker, and then under from back, front to back, and then, oh, okay, I went under from back to front, and now under from front to back, and then now I'm ready to knit some stitches here, and then I will show you how I kind of loosely move them around so that there's no gap there. I need to readjust my stitches on here real quick. Let me readjust these real quick. Okay, I've readjusted my needle and my wire, and now I'm just gonna knit these stitches on here, and then when I knit the other one, when I get here, that's when I'm going to do the knit two together for right there, and then I'll readjust to where these 6 stitches are on this side too. Just got to get there first. So we're bringing this side together with this side, and it's going to feel really awkward. Or maybe it won't feel awkward for you. You're probably a much better and thorough knitter than I am. But this pattern is really confusing, and when what is on my finger? When I go through confusing patterns, I always like to check on YouTube to see if there's tutorials on them, because I am a very visual learner. So I really hope that this video series that I've been doing has been helpful to you, because we've basically been learning how to do this pattern together. So I'm just gonna keep knitting here all the way down this needle, and then I will move on to the next needle, and then I will position the sides of my needles to where they are situated properly, with the gap in the needles being right in the middle of the underarm. And I'll show you what that means here in just a minute. I'm gonna go ahead and get to all the way to the end here when I'm coming up to the edge right there, and I'll meet you back here. Okay, so I'm here at the point where my stitch marker is right here. So the stitches, the yarn that we lifted to close the gap is right here and right here. So I'm gonna knit this stitch, and then I'm gonna move the stitch over so I can get this guy off, and that will be those two, that will be that closed up. I'm just gonna take this stitch off for a second, smuck that up, put it back. I'm gonna knit these two together. And now I'm just gonna keep going all the way to the middle. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So right here is the center. I'm gonna do one more. And now I'm gonna wanna fix my needle and my yarn again, or my needle and my wire again. And we wanna do it so that these two needles, you see how we have the one side here and the one side here, we're going to fix it so that it's proper. So basically, in order to do that, you just grab this needle and we're just gonna pull it. And don't worry about that. Because remember, I had the yarn that was down here that I had already attached, and I was too lazy to go back and pull it out and redo. So that's what that long thread was for me. Yours won't have that. So I'm just gonna tug it a little bit and then push it back down. And I will weave that in when all is said and done. So now we have our back stitches and our front stitches. And I'm going to push this needle back all the way through everything we've just done. See how we're good now? We've got our stitches here, and this right here is where I'm gonna knit those two together to close that gap. And then our other stitches back here. So this is the beginning of your counters. So I've already done 2 rows, even though this would be your first row to start. So you grab your counter and put 1 there, okay? I'm putting 2 because I've already done 2 rows. And remember, we're going to knit 11 rows, and on our 12th row is where we're going to decrease on the front needle and then on the back needle. So now we're going to pull this back needle out just like a normal magic loop, and we're going to keep going. And remember, this right here is that ridge there. After you do a few rows, that ridge won't be there anymore. You won't even need to worry about it. So I'm going to come in and just knit across. And I'm knitting these stitches very close to the needle, kind of tightly, because that's how we want to do that. So here we've come to the stitch that's right here, and then my stitch marker. So I'm just gonna, and this has a little gap for me because remember that yarn back here that I had just pulled out? I just need to tighten it. So I'm gonna just take this off real quick, push that off there. And then I'm gonna put it back. You see how, can you tell, or can you see how that's how we put those on there? So I'm gonna put it back here. And now I'm just gonna go into the front just to knit regularly. And and I'm going to knit those two together. There we go. Can you tell here? Can you see how we don't have a massive gap? Let me get around one more time. Let me come all the way over to the edge here, and then I'll sort of separate the needles a little bit so you can see that we don't have a gap. Be right back. Okay, so I'm all the way back to the beginning again, right here in between the two needles where my little ducky stitch minder is. And as you can see, we have connected our stitches from the sleeve to the underarm, and this stitch is a little stretched out, but as you continue to knit and you move it around, it's going to become more comfortable and it's not going to be stretched out. But see how we have no gap here? And let's turn it around on this side and push this back in there. And we have no gap here. We just have the ridge from the underarm stitches where we picked up, and that's going to go away as you knit. You just kind of push those down, and you're also going to have over here on this side, you're going to have where you attached your yarn that's not woven in place. There may be like a little loose stitch, and that's when you just reach down in between your needles here and you just tug it. You're going to do that a couple of times as you go through with your rows. So now is the easy part where you just use your stitch counter and you're going to knit in the round all the way up to row 11, and then when you get to this 12th row, that's when we are going to decrease here, knit all the way around, and then decrease here. So I'll see you back here in a few rows for me, and I'll show you the decrease, and then I'm going to leave you to your own devices until we get to the very end where we're going to do the icord bind off for the sleeve. And guys, we are almost there. This thing has taken us forever. We're almost there. Keep going. I'll see you back shortly. Okay, so I've completed 11 rows and I'm on my 12th row, and this is the row that we are going to decrease on. So it says, while at the same time decreasing 2 stitches on every 12th round, a total of 4 times, as follows: knit 1, knit 2 together, knit to the last 3 stitches, then knit 2 together through the back loop, and then knit 1. So every time we do that, we're going to be decreasing 2 stitches. So I've knit 11 rows, and this is what it looks like so far. Down here is my little stitch minder that just shows me that this is the beginning of my sleeve, the underarm of my sleeve. So I've got my magic loop wire out here, and I'm going to pull this out. And so the first thing we do is we are going to knit 1 and then knit 2 together. Knit 1, knit 2 together, simple as that. Now we're going to knit all the way to the end of the row where we will do the knit 2 together through the back loop, and then 1 right at the end, and then we will start over again with row number 1, and we're going to do that a total of 4 times. So I'm coming up on my last 3 stitches here, and when you get to your last 3 stitches, you're going to knit 2 together through the back loop. Just like that, and knit 1. And that is the end of that 12th row. So I'm going to just go back to 0 now. So you're going to do that 3 more times. And once you finish those, then it's going to be time to do the icord bind off for the sleeve. So every time you do one of those decreases on your sleeve, it's going to give you sort of a little stair step. So you can see here, then there's a stair step there, and then here, or actually rather, so here, 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 and then that's the end. I don't know, can you tell? So it's going to look like that on your underneath. And then we'll do the icord bind off, and then it will be time to just weave the end in, bringing these 2 ends together. And then we will do the V-neck, where we will simply pick up the stitches that we need around the V-neck, and then we don't do any other knitting. We just pick them up, and then we immediately icord bind off all the way around. So let's finish up this sleeve, and then I'll meet you back here for the icord bind off, and then we'll move on to the neck. All right, guys, I'm here. So I powered through 2 1/4 episodes of Stranger Things with my knitting, and I am now ready to do the icord bind off. So you're gonna need your tally counter again. If you haven't got one of these things by now, I highly recommend them. It's like $7 at Michael's. Definitely, this thing is a lifesaver for me in knitting. So we're gonna look at the end part of where we used for the body, and it's just basically going to remind us how to do our icord bind off again. So you're gonna cast on 4 stitches. I'm not using the knitted cast on, I'm doing the backward loop. Then you're going to knit 3, knit 2 together through the back loop, and then slip those 4 stitches back on the needles. We're going to do that, knit 3, knit 2 together through the back loop 3 times. And then we will do knit 3 together through the back loop, and slip the 4 stitches back onto the left hand needle. Then we'll do that once. And we're going to continue that sequence there throughout the entire time until we get everything bound off. So again, get your tally counter. All right, so I'm ready. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use this backward loop cast on to put 4 new stitches here on the needle. 1, 2, 3, 4. Not too tight, but you know, tight enough. So there you see them right there. So now I'm going to knit 3, one, 2, 3, and we've come to that gap. Do you remember the gap from the first time we did the icord on the body? We've come to our gap. So now we're going to knit 2 together through the back loop. And then now we're going to slip these 4 stitches back onto our left hand needle. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that was our first section. We're going to do this again 2 more times, and then we'll do the 3rd section. So we're going to knit 3, 1, 2, 3. we've come to our gap. So now we're going to knit 2 together through the back loop. And we're going to put those 4 stitches right back onto our needle. And that's number 2. Knit 3, 1, 2, 3, knit 2 together through the back loop, and then we're going to put those 4 stitches right back onto our needle. And I'm sorry if you can hear the little people out there. Yeah, life is going on outside. So you can see we're starting to get our little edge there. So now we've done our 3rd one, so this is our 4th one, which is going to be knit 3, then knit 3 together through the back loop. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, and we've come to our gap here. So we're going to come back here, grab that one, grab the 2nd, and grab the 3rd stitch, and we're going to knit those together through the back loop, and we're going to put those stitches right back on to our left hand needle, and then we're going to come back and reset. So now we're going to keep doing that. We're going to do that again, and we're going to keep doing that entire process throughout the entire edge of the sleeve. All right, so we've done that 2nd little section there, and we're going to keep doing that entire section we just did. We're going to keep going all the way around the sleeve. So I will see you again when we are all done at this end. All right, so we're here at the end. I have the last 4 stitches on the left hand needle, and this is the part where we just bind off like normal. Knit 2, pass that over, knit 1, pass that over, knit 1, pass that over, and now we're just gonna snip this yarn and pass that over, and there we are. We finished the sleeve, and all that's left to do is to take this yarn right here, and we're going to come together, and we're going to tuck this guy right there, tuck that in, and we're going to bring these together, and we're going to weave in this edge to this edge. Don't freak out too much about it. Here we go, that's better. Don't freak out too much about it, because this is going to be on the underside of your arm. No one's going to see it. Just going to weave those 2 bits together, and you're done with this arm. And I'm done with this arm. And now it's time to do this V-neck. And this is going to require an entirely separate video. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you shortly in the next video for the V-neck.